Hello and welcome to No Limit. This is a series of videos where I go over each of the teams in WIXOSS Diva format and just go over some of the team's strengths and weaknesses at very high level just to give kind of a general overview of what the team's play style is. If you're new to the game or if you're wanting to switch up teams, you're wondering, what the right team for you is, then keep watching and let's find out. So No Limit is in pretty much all respects the main character team of We Cross, both in the anime, of course, Harana being the main character of the season of Diva Live, but also in the card game itself, at least in the current sets we have released. No Limit is the most popular and pretty widely regarded as the strongest team. So, pretty much in all respects, not only in the show, in strength, and in popularity, No Limit is kind of setting the benchmark on all of those. So, why is that the case? Well, No Limit is a pretty straightforward game plan. It's pretty easy to pick up if you're new to the game. It's a very new player friendly, so it's not terribly complicated what they want to do. It's also very aggro heavy. It's a game plan that tries to set the tempo of the game and doesn't necessarily wait or rely on what your opponent is doing. It's a very clear game plan. Everything is sort of laid out in front of you, very easy to follow. You kind of do your own thing as No Limit, and the opponent is basically forced to try to respond and keep up with what you're doing. Otherwise, they'll just fall behind, and you can kind of overwhelm them with tempo and early game advantage. Looking at the No Limit specific piece, Glory Grow here, you can kind of get a feel for exactly what the specifics of the straightforward game plan that No Limit may have in store for you. It's pretty simple. Basically, it gives your L-Rig double crush, and it gives your L-Rig an ability that means your opponent cannot guard. So by using Glory Grow, basically it means you get one extra damage from the double crush, and it's also the one damage your Elric would normally do per turn is guaranteed to hit because your opponent can't guard. Functionally, what this does is it means that you are getting an extra damage in, you're bypassing guards. It basically just contributes to No Limit's ability to close out games. It's sort of guaranteed damage. Uh, in some cases, it can be mitigated based on weird timings. Double Crush won't actually win you a game, for example, if you have one life cloth remaining. Basically, if you hit somebody with Double Crush, if they have one life cloth, it doesn't actually cause the game loss. It'll crush the one life cloth, and then the double crush will kind of fizzle out because there's no cloth left to crush. But other than that one specific case, it's basically just an extra damage, and it guarantees that one of your attacks will land. Pretty simple, straightforward. For the most part, this piece will just always be used as soon as you grow to level 3. There's virtually no reason why you wouldn't do so. So it makes using it and abusing its power relatively easy to do. So let's go into the centers, starting with Harana, the main character of the anime, and kind of to a lesser extent the card game at the moment, just because of how popular she is as a center. Before I get too much into it, I would like to mention that all of the No Limit centers, at least the first iterations of them, have the enter effect to draw a card and enter charge 1. This ability is really great to kind of refill your resources as soon as you hit level 3. It really ensures that basically once you hit level 3, you're kind of firing on all cylinders. You're enacting your game plan as much as possible. You have enough enter and enough card choices to basically get exactly where you need to go. She has a constant effect that attacking Signy on your field get plus 2,000 power. This ability is mostly irrelevant. There are a few red Signy that do care about power levels and getting to certain thresholds, but otherwise, for the most part, you can kind of just ignore this ability. Harana's real draw is her once per game ability that basically is when she attacks, you can down 2 up to level 2 L-rigs on your field. If you do, basically you get a free damage into your opponent unless they discard a guard. So it's essentially an extra L-rig attack on one turn as long as you have your 2 assists are grown to level 2. So combine this with Glory Grow, and what you're basically getting 3 damage worth of attacks in on your opponent just using your L-Rig, and that doesn't account for all of the Signy you may have on your field that will be kind of bearing down on them as well. So with those two combined, it's a pretty potent 1-2 punch, and it's the main reason why, at least at the moment, Harana specifically, Harana-centered No Limit is a very powerful and very easy to use deck because None of these effects are contingent on anything at all. All you have to do is just use the once per game as long as you have 2 level 2s, and that'll trigger. Glory Grow is just kind of 2 guaranteed damage in, and combine those two plus with whatever Signy attacks you'll have at the moment, and it's a very potent, aggressive combination. Next, we have Akino. She has a constant ability that during your opponent's turn, the Signy in your center zone get plus 2,000 power. This one is a little more relevant, but still not as relevant just because your opponent usually has so many ways to remove your Signy anyway, between not just like general vanish spells, but Elrig assists, and it's removing Signy is usually not a problem, so whatever their power level is typically doesn't matter. Her once per game ability, you down 2 up level 2 Elrugs, just like Harana, except for Akino, you may discard a card with a guard. If you do, you can bounce 2 target Signy on your opponent's field to their hand. So it's almost a control-y version of Harana's aggression ability. Basically, what you're doing is you're exchanging a guard in hand to remove 2 of your opponent's Signy. It doesn't guarantee the damage like Harana does, but it does potentially open up 2 lanes for you to then swing in with your Signy. Really, the question is, do you want the extra Elrig attack or do you want the extra lane removal? Usually, Harana just has no issues with lane removal anyway, so having the extra removal options is not necessary, and the extra Elrig damage is kind of where Harana shines. But there are situations where I can see value in this. It also gives an interesting dynamic in that it allows your servants, which is your guard cards, to act in a more aggressive manner. But at the same time, it does cause Akino to be more heavily reliant on those cards. So having servants in hand for her is extremely important, and not having them means that you're not operating at full potential, which makes her typically harder and more complicated to use. Finally, here we have Ray, who at the moment of recording of this video, not out in English yet, but will be here soon. Her auto ability is at the beginning of your attack phase. If you drew 2 or more cards with your effects this turn, target one of your opponent's level 2 or less Signy. You may pay blue and 1 colorless. If you do, you get to put it on the bottom of their deck. Basically, she rewards drawing a bunch of cards because then she can turn that card draw into just removal without even using cards, which is very good. Her once per game ability is to down 2 of your up level 2 Elrigs, again, the no limit theme. You discard all of your cards, and your opponent discards cards from their hand equal to the number of blue cards you discarded this way. So Ray is very focused on card advantage, both drawing a lot of cards to activate her auto ability to then remove Signy, and then throwing away the cards in your hand to basically discard cards from your opponent. Very much focused on hand control and hand destruction. I think she's a very powerful Elrig. It takes a little more finagling than Harana, obviously, but I think her ceiling is potentially higher, even if she is more complicated to use and potentially more prone to bricking if you don't draw the right cards at the right time, type of thing. But she is a very good option. Just the ability to have removal every turn printed on your Elrig just for doing things that you're doing on your turn anyway is very powerful. So basically paying 2 enter every turn as soon as you hit level 3, as long as you're drawing enough cards, which if the deck is constructed in such a way, you should be doing that anyway. It's just free removal. It's free abilities that'll give you advantage. And then again, put the pressure on your opponent because those lanes will open up and then you're just swinging in with Signy, so they'll be forced to react and that sort of thing. So I think Ray's a very powerful choice as an alternative to Harana if you're sick of the Harana or you want even just a slightly more different flavor of aggression, one that focuses more on, like I was saying, hand control and hand advantage. Moving on to assists, I'm going to do this segment a little bit differently than I do in the other videos. Typically, I will show the most common version of whatever level 1 and level 2 assists people are running and discuss, their strengths and weaknesses. For No Limit specifically, just because the main game plan of No Limit is so straightforward that you're kind of given flexibility in terms of what you run in your assists. If you feel like your deck needs more hand disruption, if you think it needs more removal, if you think it needs more draw, whatever you feel like your deck needs, you have some options in terms of what your assists are. It also speaks to some of the power of the assists that, especially Ray, as we'll see in a moment, Several of them have so many good options that you're not always pigeonholed into one or two of the best choices. You have some flexibility in terms of what you want to run. Speaking of Ray, the assist here that I've highlighted at level 1 is Lunar Blossom, which is draw a card and your opponent discards a card at random. The only reason I've highlighted this one is because it's different than her other level 1 assist is the standard level 1 blue assist, which is just to draw 2 cards. Honestly, either of those assists are great depending on what you're looking for in the deck. I actually would say Lunar Blossom potentially is more of a liability just because of if people are running Xenocluster, having Lunar Blossom actually will turn on Xenocluster, so that is a concern, but it is different than the other level 1 assist, which is just draw 2 cards, so I figured I'd highlight it here. For level 2s, absolute 0 at attack phase timing for 3 enter. You get to put target Signy on your opponent's field on the top or bottom of their deck. If that Signy was level 2 or less, your opponent discards a card. So it's kind of the traditional lane clearing Signy on attack phase timing, basically meaning that your opponent is attacking in an open lane. If you can remove that Signy before they attack, you're saving a damage and you're opening a lane for your next turn. So those are very good. It costs 3, which is a little high, although it is in blue. So blue doesn't typically have a lot of attack phase timing removal. Usually what you'll see is, downing things and keeping the lanes full, but the fact that this actually removes a Signy is notable. It can also discard a card potentially from your opponent's hand if you choose a level 1 or 2 Signy to bounce, so that is a consideration as well. Again, similar to Lunar Blossom, you do have to be wary potentially of Xenocluster and fueling your opponent's hand kind of accidentally by doing so, so do keep that in mind. The other one I would like to talk about is Ray Divine Majesty. This one will be coming out in P03. She has 3 enter abilities. The first one, which you will get for free by paying the grow cost of 2. Target 1 Signy on your opponent's field and down it. So like I was saying, similar to Madoka and other blue assists, it's just downing as opposed to removing. Her second enter ability is to pay a blue and a colorless to down a Signy. And then her third enter ability is to discard 3. You can choose one of your opponent's down Signy and put it on the bottom of their deck. So if you play the full cost of this, it'll be a total of 4 enter to down 2 Signy, and one of the 2 that you downed can go on the bottom of the deck. Honestly, bottoming it is probably more important than downing a second one. I guess it depends on the game state. Really, the reason I like this one is just because of flexibility. You're saving a life cloth automatically because you're downing something probably in an open lane. If you have enough cards in hand, you can choose to bottom it, which then removes it to allow you to swing it on your next turn. The cost of 3 cards is potentially a lot, so you probably won't be using that all the time, but having it as an option is excellent. And then the ability to pay 2 and down another Signy is also very good. So extremely flexible, a lot of really good modes. This is the kind of card that you will not always play the same, just depending on game state, but the fact that it has all of those options, and they're all very good options, I think this is kind of the assist moving forward that people should be switching to, just because it has a lot of really good things in terms of saving your life cloth and also opening lanes for you. So it's just does a lot of things very efficiently and is very strong. Moving on to Akino, I think her most usable level 1 assist is Akino Rock to return target level 2 or less Signy on your opponent's field to their hand. Basically, it goes along with the no limit game plan of clearing out lanes and getting as much early game aggression in as possible. And again, doing that for free is very good. She also has an option, Akino Thumbs Up. You look at the top 7 cards, reveal up to 1 white Signy and 1 red Signy from among them, and add them to your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom of your deck. This is a very white level 1 assist, similar to how the sort of standard blue level 1 assist is draw 2. This is very standard for what the white card advantage is. Having card selection, you're somewhat limited by what your choices are, that you have to get they have to be Signy and you have to have 1 white and 1 red, but getting that card advantage is a nice option to have as well. You can kind of use this to dig, to pull a Lancelot, for example, and still get that lane clearing type effect you would get with Rock, but have it through, a Signy instead, that type of thing. So it's another option, and it's not a bad one if you choose to use it. Her big level 2 is Akino Bye Bye. For 2 enter, you can return target Signy on your opponent's field to their hand, and then you can pay a white and a colorless to add a servant from your trash to your hand. Basically, it's a 2 enter removal, which is relatively common at that rate to open up a lane and do that. You also have the option to pay 2 enter and recur a guard, which can protect you and keep you healthy to try to, again, shift that momentum in your favor and kind of change the math in such a way that your opponent won't be able to defeat you before you can kind of swing in for lethal. Finally, we have Harana. Her level 1 assist that I've chosen here is to vanish target level 2 or less Signy on your opponent's field. So very similar to Akino, except instead of sending it to their hand, you send it to their enter zone. But again, opening lanes early on, free to grow, all that kind of stuff. Open lanes, early aggression, etc. You've heard it all before. It's just more of that. Her level 2 assist that I think is the best, at least right now, is Power On, which is weird because it's one of the few that does not have attack phase timing for level 2s. The reason I choose this one specifically is because it's 1 to grow. It has the option when it enters to either draw 2 or enter charge 2, which both of those are very good. So it can basically actually give you an extra enter, which is somewhat uncommon in red. It also has the enter effect to vanish target Signy, so it's opening a lane. It doesn't save you from damage, but the fact that it's actually potentially enter positive and it still opens a lane for you to attack in is very good. Because the no limit decks tend to be so much more aggressive than their opponents, the fact that this doesn't necessarily save you a damage isn't the end of the world. So this is an option. In my opinion, the premier Harana level 2 is Harana Stamp, which is coming out soon. This one does have attack phase timing, which is the reason why I think this one is better. It has the enter ability to vanish target Signy on your opponent's field with 12,000 or less. It is 1 to grow, so it is the same cost. It is attack phase timing. There is a limitation that it has to be 12k or less, but outside of a few specific Signy effects, this will probably hit anything that you want it to hit anyway. You also have the option to pay 5 more enter. If it is your opponent's turn, this turn your opponent can't pay enter costs of 1 or more. This is a very situational ability. I don't necessarily see it being useful all that much. Really, the reason you run this is to be an attack phase timing that costs 1, so very efficiently costed, to vanish a Signy, so you're protecting your life cloth, you're opening up a lane to attack in with your own Signy. It just does a lot of things that I like to see, especially for 1 enter cost. It's a very efficiently costed, very aggressive, and it does exactly what you need it to do. Finally here, we'll talk about the no limit specific cards. Rose Quartz is the no limit themed Signy. For 2 red, you can vanish target Signy on your opponent's field with power 12k or less. Again, just so much of tying into clearing lanes, additional aggression. Paying 2 enter on a Signy to vanish pretty much anything is a pretty good rate. She also has an auto ability. Whenever she attacks, you can discard 2 cards to draw 2 cards, which that's extremely good for hand filtering, like if you're fishing for a guard, that kind of thing. Obviously, it won't be usable on the turn where you play her necessarily, but if you do need a guard or if you want to potentially set up for your next turn, very good options to do that as well. The no limit specific spell is Deafening Inferno. If you've played the game at all, you've probably seen this everywhere. Even the regular effect to vanish target Signy with power 8k or less is very good, but the fact that this is no limit specific, you can go up to 10k, makes it even better. You can pretty much hit any level 2 outside of a specific ones that potentially boost their power higher than natural, but the dual color level 2s at 10k tend to dodge a lot of cheap removal, obviously on the Deafening Inferno. If you weren't no limit, the fact that those are 10ks, they would get by it, but this is just a very cheaply costed removal spell. It's very good, very usable at pretty much all levels, and the fact that no limit does get a bonus out of it makes it that much better. And with all that, that is no limit at a high level. I'm not going to talk about other non-team specific abilities just because so much of what no limit does can kind of be a little bit of anything. Obviously, Lancelots and Romails are very good just with clearing lanes, but as you've seen based on just the Elrics, anything that clears lanes or promotes early game aggression, you can kind of build it however you want. Obviously, Rey will need more specific blue cards just to try to turn on her ability, and also ones that will draw her cards. Akino tends to be a little bit more control-y. She likes to use her guards in other ways, so if you can recur those guards with other cards, which there are cards that do that, obviously that's a priority. But really, the end game here is that No Limit is a very simple game plan. All you want to be doing in is just swinging in with all your Signy on the open lanes whenever you can. Try to put the pressure on your opponent and hopefully win by turn 3 or 4, because at that point you'll start to run out of steam a little bit more, and your opponent may be able to catch up to you at that point. So, as always, questions, comments, concerns, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.